Welcome back to another episode of Strange Conspiracies. You'll notice this one's being dropped a little bit later in the day. We did this with intention. We wanted to see kind of different times that, you know, the algorithm would work for YouTube. But tonight's episode is going to be awesome, guys. Our guest tonight is going to share some encounters he's had with kind of strange, like, we'll call them alien crafts beings, just different things that he's experienced through his life. He's going to share it. And the way he tells the story, I think you're going to find very intriguing. So, guys, dive in and let me know what you think in the comments.
Okay, so my name is Bobby Killow. I live in Houston, Texas. I'm 55. I work at an engineering company, a civil engineering company. I'm a land surveyor. I'm here today because you reached out to the group I was in. I'm in a Facebook group of, I forget the exact name. It was like an alien abductees group. And I think you had asked if anybody wanted to tell their story, and I, raised my hand and said, yeah, sure, I'll tell you. I guess that we can start there. My experiences started in, I'm going to say around 1974, 75. I was about 4 years old at the time. And, but I'm going to be jumping back and forth a lot because I have a lot of thoughts on the subject. Like, I think, first of all, we should begin, like, at the beginning, like, as far as I'm concerned, like, when people were first exposed to it, I think of, like, George, what was that broadcast they did where people were freaking out? It was like remember that? It was like War of the Worlds type thing where they did a fake broadcast that aliens had landed. You heard about Cody?
I know what you're talking about, but I can't place it. I can't think of it right now.
Yeah, I think it was like was it George Orwell, War of the Worlds? They did a broadcast saying aliens had landed and people were freaking out and they were jumping out of windows and taking it pretty seriously. They thought this fake broadcast was real, and a lot of people, it caused a lot of panic because they really made it sound real. But then, so people at that time were obviously taking it pretty seriously, but over time I noticed that the ridicule people would get, if they dared say that they saw, something, it seems to be almost like a psychological psyop from the government to, like, I don't think that was by accident that people who claimed to have seen things were ridiculed. I think that they were, that was done to them on purpose to keep, help to keep their mouths shut.
I agree with that.
So when we first met, I asked you what your earliest memory was, and the reason, I'd asked that because my earliest memory is being face to face with an alien gray. Like, there was actually three of them, and one of them was very close to my face, and it spoke to me. I mean, I had some communication with it. I guess I can get into that later. I'll give more detail on that later. But that, that was like one of my very first memories. Like, I maybe have 3 or 4 from, before kindergarten. And so I think that impacted me a lot growing up, by the way. When you have, ever since then, and I was 4 years old, I had another sighting, and then another sighting, and another sighting. And the things that I've seen are so unbelievable in nature, and like that if there hadn't been somebody like right there with me, like it would have, like, I might have doubted my own memory. But I've always kind of thank God that, during each of my experiences, there was always somebody else there with me. And that helps a lot. I mean, like, for people that might be watching this, you're like, oh, I wonder if this guy's, crazy or anything. I mean, when people start telling stories like this, I mean, there's probably a real chance it could be, you know what I mean? But for me, and that's why it's good, for me to always have somebody different there with me that we could talk about. Hey, what did you just see? Did you see, like, wow, like to bounce things off of, to make sure that you're both seeing the same thing here. So after the alien abduction, and I'll get in more into detail on that, like, towards the end. Again, I was like only 4 years old, and it happens in the middle of the night typically. I mean, from my studies, usually right around 3 a.m. It's like the witch's hour. Everybody's dead asleep. It's like they're not. Um, but I when I was about 10 years old in Salt Lake City, um, me and my friend Alan, my dad had asked us to take out the trash, and he actually grabbed one side of the trash can, I grabbed the other, and we were carrying out the front door. And we opened the front door, it was nighttime. We're looking out. It was at the Village 2 apartments outside of Salt Lake City. I think it's in Sandy, Utah. They're still there. I actually went back there a couple of years back to that same spot because I wanted to see it again. But we opened the door, and about maybe 50 feet away and about 15 feet off the ground, there's a round white sphere with, I'm guessing maybe 4 feet in diameter with like 4 feet long spikes that are coming off of it. And then there's some other ones that are a little bit shorter, and then some smaller ones. I did a drawing, digital recreation for that, and the recreation is similar, but it's not really perfect. The sizes of the spikes were a little more varied than what you're seeing, but that's as close as I could get. I just remember we were just both standing there looking at it. Me and my friend Alan, like, our mouths just dropped. Just like, wow. And when I tell you it was one of the most beautiful things that I've ever seen, it was beautiful. It was like looking at a jewel or a ruby, just like a white. And we were talking about plasma earlier. I couldn't tell you what the thing was made out of. It didn't look metal. It seemed to be made out of like light. But like the edges of it, if you were to look at it, I remember the edges of it were just perfectly crisp. Like if you think of the edge of a razor blade, that wouldn't be like straight enough. This thing was immaculately, perfectly symmetrical. And the best I could describe it, like when I try to start thinking about it, like the hairs on my arms will like stand up. But it was like completely, perfectly symmetrical. I mean, it seemed like down to the atom, and even like on either end, like all the, electrons were spinning in unison, just perfect. I mean, just perfect. And it was beautiful, and it was bright, but not so bright that, you had to like look away, but it was just the most perfect, brilliant, perfectly white, luminescent object that was not lighting up the ground underneath it. It's like all the light stayed contained inside of it. And I think that's part of what maybe gave it that such a distinct look from the background, the edge of it. There was a movie that came out like decades ago. I don't remember it, but it was like a movie in which like there's video game characters running around the street. Like there was like a 50-foot Pac-Man like chewing on cars or whatever. I don't remember the name of the movie. But I mean, that's how out of place this thing looked in the environment. It did not look like it even belonged in this reality, basically. It was incredible. And again, I think one of the other striking things, like I said, is it wasn't illuminating the ground. And so I stared at it for a while, and I guess a little bit of fear set in. And, my instinct being 10 years old is like, I want to show my dad. And so I ran inside to go get my dad. And I'm looking through the condo, and I run to the back, and he's back there in the bedroom. I'm like, Dad, come here. And he's like, just a minute, son. And I'm like, Dad, come here. And he's like, give me just a minute. And I'm like, Dad, come on, there's like a UFO or something outside. And he looks at me, because I know my dad believed in him. I'm not sure what his experiences were, but he's like, he took me seriously then. And just then my friend Alan was running into the bedroom too, because I guess he didn't want to be out there alone. And so all three of us went to the door. And when we got there, it was gone. And it was like, oh man, that was like, I wanted further. I just wanted my dad to see it, and he didn't get to. And that left me, that was 10 years old. And I guess when that happened, it really kind of, the previous experience of having been abducted at such an early age, it kind of just, at that point, it's kind of reinforces the memory of that event. I think in my mind, I had played that off, the initial abduction scenario, as a dream. To me, it seemed like a dream. They probably did come for me in the middle of the night, and I'm laying there in bed one minute, next minute you're on board. Face to face with the alien grade, not even really realizing how you got in there. So I saw this thing with Alan. That was in Salt Lake City. I was about 10, probably, give or take. I ended up moving from there back to Houston, Texas here. So I'm going to be jumping back and forth. Before that episode at 10, and after my initial, experiences when I was 4 or 5, there was one in between. I keep forgetting that one. My family used to drive a lot, like caravan from Salt Lake City to Texas, and one of my uncles had gotten a flat, so we all pulled over, and we're out in the middle of the desert. They're fixing a flat. We're probably out there for half an hour. I don't know how long. It was somewhere in between those two events, so maybe I was 7-ish. I just remember being in the desert and looking straight up into the sky and looking at and this was the furthest object I've ever seen away, because it looked like a star, basically, way up in the upper atmosphere. And I remember it was doing these weird, like, movements in the sky. And that's how, in my little mind, I was like, okay, that's one of them. And I remember looking at that for a while, and I remember eventually we left. And I remember for years after that, I was thinking, man, these guys are supposed to be, like, intelligent. Why are they zigzagging around like that? I couldn't compute it. Like, why wouldn't you just sit there in a hover, or why would you waste energy? And for a long time, that was kind of what I thought of. I was like, man, they're flying like an insect, kind of like erratic. And I just couldn't understand how something that was so intelligent would fly that way. But anyway, moving forward, so I had that other event. With the most beautiful one is the one I showed you, the recreation of. So then I was 10 years old then, and I moved here to Salt Lake City. From Salt Lake City here to Houston, and I was right around graduating. We may have graduated already. Maybe I think I was probably, I want to say maybe 20, which would have been like 1991. We're coming back from Surfside Beach. It's 2:00 in the morning. It was me and my buddy Jeremy. And I could put you in touch with some of these people too, by the way, if you ever wanted to talk to them.
Please do.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I said, please do. That'd be awesome.
Anyway, the people in the back seat, there was a couple girls back there. And so I'm in the passenger seat, and Jeremy's over here driving. I'm sitting shotgun, and there were two girls in the back, and so I'm kind of like leaning on my seat, and I'm kind of looking to the girl in the back seat that's across from me back here, and I'm talking, and out of the corner of my eye, kind of from your view of me now, I see another one of those little star objects. But this one, the whole thing, including the spikes, is probably only about this big. I think the digital recreation again might have showed it maybe a little bit larger, but it was actually maybe only like this big. So a small sphere with little bitty spikes. Out of the corner of my eye, I'm seeing this thing coming straight at the windshield, and it looks to me like it's like the best way I could describe it was like a strobe light effect. How somebody's moving, but you only catch little like glimpses, like almost it was almost like snapshots. Like each one almost seemed like a strobe light. It was awkward. It was awkward. I don't know how to describe it, because it almost looked like it was still for a second. I'm only seeing this thing out of my peripheral, and I'm still seeing at least like probably three different, it's like it had like symmetrical spikes, but it seemed like they were changing formation. And so I see this thing coming right at the car. So instead of looking forward, I look out the back window to see if I see it, going away from us, and I didn't see it, and that threw me off. And so I'm looking out the back window. I'm like, I didn't really say I didn't say anything. I was just like, So then I turn back around and I sit down, and I'm sitting here, and I'm like, and it was 2 a.m. and there's not a lot of coming back from the beach. There wasn't like a lot of, the street lights or whatever, but we passed a street light, and I'm like, all right, that's not what I saw. But, I was thinking, I'm not going to say anything just yet. A car passed us, and I'm looking at its headlights, and I'm like, yeah, okay. I'm trying to, in my mind, rule out anything that it could be. And so I'm like, okay, that's not what I saw. And I'm sitting there, we're driving. And I look over at Jeremy, my buddy Jeremy, who's driving. And I was just about to ask him, Jeremy, did you see anything? And just as I looked at him, I was looking over him, he's driving, and he gives this like confused look, like he kind of gets a little head shake, and he's got that little, crunched up, like, what the fuck look, he's like, he goes, man, and he's got like, we're from Texas, he's got kind of a little bit of a Texas accent to him. He's like, man, you're not going to believe this, but this fucking star thing just flew over our car. And I was like, you saw that? And he was like, hell yeah, I saw it. Because he was looking forward. I'm the one looking in the back seat. He's like, hell yeah. And then I was like, was it like pulse? Pulse? He goes, no, it was fucking spinning. And he said that it was up in the, higher altitude. And when it happened, he was driving down the freeway. This thing descended till it leveled out just above he says it was about 15 feet above the roof of the car, but I don't see how I could be looking back like this and see that thing out of my peripheral so clearly if it would have been that high. In my opinion, if it would have been a convertible and I would have had a glove, I could have just reached out over the top and caught the thing, you know what I mean? And the fact that when I thought about it later, if I didn't see, this thing was bright. It was white, pure again, a very white, pure, distinct, non-fuzzy. This isn't ball lightning. This is something very structured, solid looking, crystalline white, it's like crystal made of light or something. I don't know how to explain that, but whatever it was, he saw it very clearly, and he said that no, it was actually spinning. I looked, like I said, it didn't go out the back window. So now I'm like, years later, I'm like, man, I should have rolled the window down as we were driving and peeked up over the top of the car, because it might have just switched directions. And it either did one of two things. Because I've thought about it. Either it was coming straight at us and then switched directions and was right over our car, or it shot straight up. Because I'm looking around out that back window looking for it as it passed us, and I did not see it. So I'm pretty sure it did one of those two things. All right, so that was another one of my experiences. That was when I was about 20. So I had the abductions at 4. I've got one at 7. I've got one at 10. I've got one at 20. When I was 30, I was thinking for sure, I'm seeing a pattern here. I'm like, okay, it's been about 10 years now. I'm literally expecting an event, and it didn't happen. And then it didn't happen, and years went by, and about another 10 years go by, and this was probably now, I don't know, I'm gonna say maybe 8 years ago. So I hadn't had an experience from 20 until like about 40. And so my next experience, I'm sitting on the porch having a cigarette, and I'm looking down the street, and I'm seeing a flock of something, and I'm like trying to figure out what I'm looking at, and the first thing that popped in my mind was, are those white birds? Like, what am I? And I'm looking, and they're kind of coming closer, and this is in the daytime, and so I'm watching these things come closer, and as they're getting closer and closer, I start to realize, wow, this is a fleet. I'm looking at a fleet. And that to me was, in the daytime, a fleet. It was, and still is, like a little bit, like, it's like shocking to me, to be honest. It's like, oh man. I started to try to count them, but they were moving. And I started wasting my time because there was too many to count. And I want to say, if I had to guess, I was going to say about 18. These ones did not have perfectly beautiful crisp edges. These seem to have like a fuzzy haze around the perimeter of them. And it was rainy that day. The clouds were really low. Like here in the Galleria, it's one of those days where, like, there's buildings sometimes, like, high-rise buildings. The clouds will come so slow that the tops of the buildings are in the clouds. Like when the really dark clouds come pushing, down. It was a day like that, and these things were just below, or below that cloud day. So I'm looking at these things coming closer, and I noticed as I'm looking into it that these spheres were moving towards me, there was a black section that was rotating around them that came from each end. And earlier I drew this on this lemon here. So if you can imagine this lemon not turning so much as maybe this little black section. So what I was seeing was this black section kind of going, and the black section was moving in it was rotating in the direction of their movement. Like as it came towards me, and each of them had it. They weren't rotating, none of them sideways. That black section was rotating almost like a ball rolling down the street, but in the sky, in the direction of their movement. And they didn't seem to have a very straight, direct flight pattern either. They kind of undulated slightly as they moved along. And the most striking thing about that, daytime, very clear. And I did some math on it because there's like a water tower that was like, 800 feet away. I went on Google Earth, and I did a distance from there to that tower. And I know they were pretty much centered to that. However, the one that I was really looking at went like right over me because there was a lot of them. And, but, there was one that was about halfway to that tower. And I was on the second story, and I, like, how far am I looking up? Like, about 13, maybe 14 degrees up. I did, the calculation. I converted decimal to degrees. How far away? The tangent. Times tangent. And I think I calculated it was around 150 feet that they were in altitude. And, as they passed the building, they were leaving my line of sight. I opened the door and I come running through the house, and my son was at the computer. I'm like, Ethan, come here. And he was actually playing a game. He's a gamer, but he just shot up from the game, and we both ran out the front of the unit, and we ran up to, and I was like, son, they went that way. They were just below the clouds. And he was like, look, Dad, there they are. And I was trying to, like, looking around in the sky, trying to reacquire them. And he's like, where? I'm like, where's? And he goes, look. He was like, right down there, Dad. Look, right below. He's trying to point them out to me. He goes, oh, they just went into the clouds. And so I looked at my son, and I didn't want to, like, lead him into an answer. So I looked at him. I'm like, son, what did you just see? And I was like, was it a flock of white birds? And he looks at me and he goes, not unless those flock of white birds were like spheres of light, Dad. And I was like, okay. So you saw what I saw then. And that was probably about, like I said, maybe 7-8 years ago, I'm guessing. I actually did, I made a report on that. And I remember I talked to, I think his name's Daryl Sims, the alien hunter, and he was kind of shocked. He was kind of like, man, daytime, we looked at it as like, and as far as I know, nobody else saw it or reported it. But again, my son was there. And I mean, there were cars driving down the road. These were only 150 feet up. You would have think, hey, why aren't there more people like seeing that? I mean, I don't understand. But I mean, maybe they were only visible for maybe 2 or 3 minutes. Maybe some people are scared to report stuff. I mean, I don't know why. But some people think that, perhaps certain people are allowed to see them and certain people aren't. I don't know.
Yeah, I'll tell you from talking to other people, it seems like a lot of times when you have one encounter, I guess I would say it this way best. It's almost like you're marked. It's like your percent chance to see another encounter is exponentially higher than somebody who's not seen anything ever. That's just what I've gathered from talking to other folks about similar type situations.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, we'll definitely get into that later because, being an abductee and being, like so close to them and having things done to myself, it definitely leaves you wondering, were they taking something from me, or were they leaving something from me? And so now that I'm at this age, I'm 55. I feel like, these experiences that I've had, I feel like they got to be following me. Like, who, right? I mean, who else? I don't understand why I would have had this number of events if I wasn't on their radar somehow. And part of that makes me, and every little piece to the stories that I'm telling you, I can just tell you these stories. But then, for me, I mean, I think about it like a lot. Like for instance, this thing, the dark section in that, it was the darkest black that I'd ever seen. Like I was telling you earlier, when I looked into that black, it was like looking into a void, is the best I could describe it, like an endless void. It looked like an endless void in there. And it was broad daylight. That was just spectacular. Having events like this, Cody, they change a person. Because, like, I mean, growing up, I've done a lot of research into, like, especially, with the advent of, internet and YouTube and all that. Man, the whole time I've just been, gathering up stories and looking for people that have had similar experiences. And if you do enough of these, I'm sure that everybody's gonna. One universal question is that we all ask, why me? Like, why was I chosen? Like, why me? Why not? Why are my friends not experiencing this? Or like, why me? And I mean, part of my studies, I have like Irish, Scots Irish. I don't know if that. I mean, I've seen some connection there. I feel like also at some point somebody in my family or even myself, it maybe somehow, maybe even a dream, I mean, who knows, somehow gave consent. I just feel like maybe somewhere along the way somebody gave consent, because in a way, Cody, it's like, I mean, it's awesome, man. I can look at you and I can tell you, man, I've been on a fucking spaceship, but it wasn't the most pleasant experience. And trying to tell people about that makes you out to be a freak. So it's more of a curse than anything. I mean, yeah, I mean, part of me growing up was like, man, I know stuff that my teachers don't know. I know about a reality that exists that seems everybody else seems oblivious to. And I notice also that a lot of them want to be oblivious to it. People choose to be asleep. Ignorance really is bliss. And should all this stuff, I mean, look at what's going on, Cody. I mean, if you're looking at the news right now, you're seeing the senators talk about human alien hybrid programs. If you look at the Epstein files, the crap that's going on there with it's paramount to Satan worship. It's not going to be pretty. When all this stuff comes out, when you have a little 3.5 foot creature that's can hear what you're thinking about running for the door here. He's going to tell you in a thought, don't even think about it, paralyze you right there. Like, its size doesn't matter in that scenario. It's scary. You're dealing with creatures and things that are, it's incredible, the things that are happening. But I mean, go ahead.
I was going to say, absolutely. No, I appreciate you bringing that up. I mean, I think it's important too for other folks to hear this, because you're sharing something that's close to you and the experience that you had, and I think that you bring a perspective that is unique, and like what you just said about maybe it being something that was given consent down the line somewhere in your history of your family or something, and that's an interesting concept.
Well, I'll go back. Let's go back, since I'm almost finished with my whole experiences, and then we'll talk more about, I guess, a little bit, if you want, about we can conjecture and theorize, I guess, a little bit. But I'll go back to my experiences and finish that out real quick. So, my first experience, again, I was 4 years old. I don't know how I got on board. My sister probably could tell you better, because she was there with me. I didn't know that until later. But I'm laying on a metal bed. The whole inside of the craft was gold. The bed I was laying on looked like it was made of gold. The walls, the ceiling, like everything looked like a piece of gold, like that was carved out, or just, kind of probably how Bob Lazar would describe it, like curved corners. I'm 4 years old. I'm looking at the thing that caught my attention first was the wall to my right. I'm laying on a metal bed and I'm looking at the wall to my right, and it was interesting to me because it was curved, and I'd never seen a curved wall before. And that, later on thinking about it, of course, I'm thinking, okay, maybe I'm in a disc-shaped craft near the whole wall, the hole. But I'm noticing that curve, on the side wall, and I was like, wow, I've never seen anything like that before. And I'm just kind of taking in the environment, the color of the room, and that's to my right. And then I'm look to my left, and there's 3 alien grays standing over me, with one of them being particularly close. And I don't know how they do telepathy, but one theory in my studies is that there's a very short pathway from your optic nerve to your brain that's only like that long. And so a lot of times, I've heard that the experiencers will describe the alien like getting very close with their eye to their face. And I don't know if that's to use that conduit to let you kind of hear their brainwaves easier, or I'm not sure, but he was very close. And so I'm leaning forward. He was kind of looking at me, and you can imagine the eyes of an alien, much bigger. And also, I guess the part that got me is like he's looking at me, and I say he, even though I can't really say that he had any male qualities, but there was definitely nothing female about the presence to me. So I usually tend to say he. I don't know if they have a sex or not. You know, my studies seem to indicate that these crays may just be biologically grown worker bees anyway. You know, we see them as the alien, when in fact, the real aliens may be a mantis or humanoid looking, might have created these just to do their bidding. So kind of like a biosynthetic AI, or like Avatar. Maybe that's why they have like they all seem to move in unison together. Maybe they're all being controlled by the same entity that's above them. I don't know. Regardless, that's a sorry, I'm getting on to theorizing again. But he's very close to my face, and he turns his face to the side. And when he did that, he was still looking at me like a bird. You know, their eyes are on the side of their head. His eyes wrapped around so much that as he turned his head like that, he's still kind of making eye contact with me. And that I had never seen eyes like that, right? And I mean, we're all going to tell you, you know, like any of us that you ever talk to, we're going to just focus in on those eyes. Like I still try to remember the rest of his face, and it's very difficult. I mean, I've probably sent you drawings that I've come up with, you know, very minimal nose and mouth. The eyes are just, man, it's like, it's intense, man. I think their eyes are, you know, damn near hypnotic. You know what I mean? I mean, you're talking about creatures that can put you into a stasis where you can't move. So it's like when they lock eyes with you, I think it's like a moment. You know what I mean? This thing locks eyes with me, then I hear its voice inside my head. Its mouth, you know, I don't remember it even having really much of a mouth at all. So I just hear it inside my head, and it says, "Do not be afraid." And I could just hear that. And I'm just a little kid, and I'm like, I'm looking at him, and I thought he was talking about "do not be afraid of me," you know, because he just did that whole little head turn and show me his, you know, the way he looks. And I thought he was referring to him, like "do not be." And so I'm aware that he's able to hear. I'm hearing him in my, and I'm aware that. I mean, I've heard stories of people talking about, oh, you know, they used a special person, you know, like they had a alien on a base, and they went and got a special person that was able to communicate with it. I was just a little kid. There was like, you know, I'm not some trained like telepathic. I mean, it was just natural. Like I guess being in their presence, they're able to communicate with you. And it was in English. I just heard him plain as day, "Do not be afraid." And so I just thought back to him. I thought, I'm not afraid. I want to learn more about you too. So I know he must have said something more to me besides "do not be afraid," because I said I want to learn more about you too. So I know there's something I'm forgetting. I've never had. I mean, I've never had the regressive hypnotherapy, and I'll tell you two reasons. Because I'm not really sure of the and some of these regressive hypnotherapy, some of these entities sometimes will channel through that person. And my wife is terrified. She's like, "Bobby, if you do hypnotherapy and these things start visiting you again, and I get wrapped up in this shit, you know, she's gonna be pissed." You know what I mean? And so for that reason, I've not done it yet, but I may end up still doing it while I'm here alone. Which is kind of why I prefer talking about this stuff actually without her around, because it might make her feel uncomfortable. But
Absolutely.
I tell this entity back. I tell it, "Look, I'm not afraid. I want to learn more about you too." But I was mistaken. He wasn't talking about "don't be afraid of me." He was talking about "don't be afraid of what is about to happen to you." And so my attention, and it's weird the way my attention is shifting around, because it's like I didn't know that something was going to come out near my feet, but my attention before it happened was brought to my feet. You know what I mean? Like I don't. So I'm looking. My attention is brought down towards my feet, and I'm looking at my feet. And from that curved wall on the right, there was like a little partition wall that came off of it. This one wasn't curved; it was just a straight wall that kind of came off of the curved one. And I'm kind of on a bed wedged in that. You know what I mean? The corner of that. where it meets the curved wall. And I'm looking at this looking at my feet, and there's a gold wall coming off of the curved gold wall, and on this gold wall there's a bunch of gold dials. And the best I could describe it is kind of like if you're looking at a cockpit of a plane, and all the little, it's just got a lot of going on in there. You know what I mean? It seemed like there was a lot going on this wall. Like little, I mean, from what I remember, it's like little dials and meters and what have you not. And I noticed then again, my attention is brought to a little bitty hole in the center of that wall. Again, before anything came out of that. It's almost like they were guiding, hey, look here, look here. I mean, now that I'm thinking about it, I've never verbalized that before, but yeah, it was kind of strange because my attention now was brought. I noticed that I'm staring at this little hole in the wall, and I'm looking at that little hole in a metal wall, and it looks kind of creepy. You know what I mean? Like, what is that little hole there for? And as I'm looking at it, like a hypodermic needle starts to emerge through that opening. And this thing starts to come out, and I'm starting to panic a little bit. And I remember looking at the needle, and I think my eyes are just getting like big because the thing must have been, I mean, it just kept coming out. It must have been like, I want to say like this long. It was like scary. And as the actual syringe part cleared the opening, it was attached to like a metal cable that was flexible. And the best way I can describe it is I've seen like electrical wire ran through flexible cables. It's because they spiral up the metal around it, and it's able to flex even though it's metal. So this needle, I'm laying on a bed. This thing is coming out like literally right between my, just beyond my feet and right in the middle of where I'm laying. So between my legs. And I'm like, obviously not able to get up, or I'm sure I would have been running, right? But yet nobody's holding me down. And this thing is coming out from the wall, and it's making little adjustments right and left and up and down as it's moving forward. And so it kind of gave me, and it kind of gave me it makes me think of a snake moving kind of towards you, you know what I mean? Up and down. And I'm like, I don't know if I was verbally screaming or in my mind I'm screaming. I'm sure I was probably verbally screaming. I'll tell you why later, but eventually this thing pierces me, and I can't really tell you where. But years later, I did find out that I had some type of testicular hernia where one of my testicles was, like I'm only 4 years old, and one of my testicles is up inside my body. And my mom took me to a doctor to have me fixed or whatever. And she was like, how did this happen to him? And the doctor's like, it must have been caused by some kind of like extreme like straining. And I'm pretty sure that they actually damaged me a little bit. And you know what, Cody? That's one thing that really gets to me, because I just had surgery last week, a small little day surgery, and I'm out cold, right? Why is it that these alien guys are doing things like this and I'm awake? Like, why wouldn't they sedate me? They could have done that easily. I didn't have to go through that trauma. And that's the part that kind of sticks me, and it kind of makes me angry. You know what I mean? I'm like, man, like, what the fuck are y'all doing? And they don't seem to have any emotion at all. Those little grays, they seem emotionless. So I remember that happening, and I might have blacked out at that point, Cody, to be honest, because that's the last I ever remember being on board. And I want to say that I'm pretty certain there was a lot of other times, but I'll get into that in just a minute. So flashing forward to about 8 years ago, after I had the daytime sighting with all the orbs, I called my sister and I'm telling her what happened. And she's like, yeah, Bob, I see orbs sometimes too. I've seen an orb. It was like at night. She tells me a story. And she goes, you know what, Bob? And I'm like, what? She goes, because I was kind of freaked out because it was a daytime of a whole fleet. She's like, you know that dream you had when you were little? You think it was a dream when you were abducted? And I was like, yeah. I'm 50. I was like probably 40. I don't know. I'm in my late 40s when she's telling me this. She's like, it wasn't a dream, Bob. I was there with you. And I was like, what? And I was like, well, why would you tell me this now, Donna? We're like almost 50 years old. And she's like, because they're demons, Bob. They're demons. That's what she said to me. And then she's like, you don't remember there'd be a white flash of white light in our room and suddenly they would be there? And I was like, no. I was only 4 at the time. She was 8, and I think she remembers a lot more. I could put you in touch with her also, or my son if you ever wanted to hear his, the sighting he had with me. But like you don't remember there'd be a white flashing light, and suddenly they'd be in our room, and I was like, no. And she's like, I was like, how often? She goes, I was like, how often did this happen, Donna? She's like, a lot, Bob, a lot. And I know my sister, when this was happening to her and me, she had told my dad at one point, she told him about these dreams that she was having. And she was only 8 years old. My dad looked at her and said, Donna, how do you know they're dreams? And that stuck with her. She was like, she never forgot that. So my sister, I'm like, well, what did you see, Donna? What happened? You never told me. She's like, I was there, Bob. I was laying on another table, I guess out towards the middle of the room. She's like, I could see 3 little grays over you, and something was happening, and you started to scream. And at that point, because my sister, when I was like 4, like in those areas, and she was a little older, she was already known how to read and write and do math, and she wanted to teach me, and she wanted to, she wanted to play like I was her kid, like she wants to take care of me, she wants to teach me how to read and do math, and she's going to be my teacher, and she was protective over me. Man. So anyway, she's over there, and she's like, leave my brother alone. We want to go home. We want to go home. Leave us alone. Leave us alone. My sister's now starting to, freak out. She's screaming. She said a human-looking alien walked in. That was female. A human-looking female that looked to be human, except that her eyes were slightly larger. Not insane like little grays, but not looking completely normal either. And this woman came out and she said, don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. Don't worry. He's going to be okay. We're going to take you home soon. Everything's going to be fine. And until she like, calmed her down. Meanwhile, I'm over there getting stuck with some 6-inch needle while the alien grays just kind of stand there motionless, 3 of them watching. So where do they come from is one of the big questions now. What do they want? What are they doing here? I mean, for any of your viewers, I'm not here to persuade anybody. If you don't want to believe, that's fine with me. And I can tell you, even if you do see them, you're going to pray that you have somebody else with you, because you may not even believe your own eyes. If you want proof, you can go to the government nowadays. They'll tell you all about it. It's right there in Congress. They'll all, it's there. So I do believe that space is malleable. Space and time. Time is not a constant. Time is very malleable. Space is time and fabric. It's like woven together, and it's not rigid. Planets sit in it and warp it. So the distances between objects can be folded. So I don't think it's impossible that they could come from another star system and be extraterrestrial. Betty and Barney Hill, said, I think it was Zeta Reticuli, that their people came from. I know people talk about Orion, the Pleiades system with the blondes. Some people talk about Lyrians. They talk about the Draco star system, which is where the reptilians, Draco, dragon, reptiles, that's where those ones might come from. There's also, you can't just say, what do aliens here for and what do they want? Because that's like saying, what does any particular fish in the sea want? They, different species are going to have different agendas. And then you may have some that are, it's probably, all of the answers are probably right. Like I'm saying, you probably have, the thing is, the way I see it, like Carl Sagan was talking about, there's more suns out there than there are grains of sand. Like if you take, a handful of sand, that's 100 millions of grains of sand just in a handful. Imagine the whole earth worth of sand. And each of those little grains of sand, so tiny, represent a star out there in space of planets going around it. So that's why it never made sense to me that people would be so shocked that alien life exists. Oh, it's so shocking when you've got billions of other planets out there. if you believe in evolution, then surely one must have evolved on an Earth-like planet. If you believe in God, why would God have created all these billions of other planets that are probably nicer and bigger and just like Earth that we may never see? For who? Like either way you look at it, it always made sense to me that they were there. And I feel like if you were to take space, as infinite as it is, and just imagine that as being our Earth's oceans. So how much space would we? Hold on, let me send this to a call. So if all of space is the Earth's oceans, how much water are we able to visibly see? We would be like stuck inside of like a smaller than a drop, in the whole ocean. We would be like probably in a few atoms of water, molecules, of water. So for us to say, well, we don't see life flying around right here, the whole ocean must be empty because we don't see anything else in our little drop. So the whole ocean must be void. Well, you can be further from the truth. Yeah, you have any thoughts or any questions yet? Because I'm going to keep going if you don't have a lot.
Yeah. No, I was going to ask you. I know you said that your sister, said, "Hey, Bob, these were demons." What do you believe? Do you think they are demons, or what do you think that these things are?
Well, that goes back to the permission thing, and I know, around the time that was going on and started with me, that one of my aunts was into witchcraft, and that she was doing witchcrafty things and involving, my mom and some of my aunts and uncles were doing really, not super crazy things, but they were, one of my aunts was dabbling in it. And so I just wonder, hey, I wonder if they opened, or allowed or invoked, or if you look at a lot of, and I used to really not subscribe to that so much, but if you, I didn't, partially, I just really didn't want to believe it. I don't want to think of that as being an option, because then now I'm faced with what? Okay. So not only do I have to say, okay, well, I've been, abducted by aliens, but these things might be, freaking demons, right? I'm trying not to cuss on your podcast. Is that okay if I cuss on here? I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, if these things are demons, like, I don't want to be thinking, dang, like I'm being followed by demons. Like, I don't know though. And like, this is why my wife doesn't, want me, like I said, to. But okay, so I mean, I'll just walk through it. I mean, I don't have anything planned here, but what I'm thinking about, okay, let's say you're a demon. Why would you be doing human hybrid things? Okay, demon, God said you can't walk the earth in a humanly form anymore. Are they trying to subvert God's will and say, okay, well, we'll walk like this then? Not truly human and not truly this. We'll be something in between. Is that a way to try to subvert God's will? That could be an option. Why would a demon need a craft though? Like, why would they need craft? Maybe they only need them to when they're actually physically abducting somebody. That's an option. Maybe they are extraterrestrial as an option. And I will say this. Let me give you some other little details. Well, I keep drinking this water, my mouth's trailing. I don't remember it specifically, but I seem to remember one little detail I'm just going to throw in there. I seem to, when I draw things, like sometimes I'll draw little aliens and stuff, then a lot of times I'll put a little staff in one of their hands, and it'll be like a rod about like this long with sparks coming off the end of it. And I seem to have a faint memory of them using that, like touching me on the forehead with it and hearing like a pop, and like, I don't know if that makes you go to sleep or what. I also remember a recurring dream, which is just, it's real simple to visualize. It's just a long straight road going through the desert. And at the very skyline, there's like a mountain range in the background. And standing behind that mountain range is a really tall T-Rex that's lime green. And again, the thing about that dream, and this is from when I was very little, is it didn't, the lime, because I like dinosaurs. And that dinosaur that seemed to be inserted into my dream was so digitized looking, especially back for when I was 4 years. It looked like it was glowing, like a bright green color in my dream that just, it didn't belong. And what I'm thinking is during my abductions that they might have implanted that dream as a cover up to, you know what I mean? Like, oh, every time I was getting abducted, they were just giving me that recurring dream. And also I think that there's a possibility that they had me dream. I remember a very vivid dream where I'm a very little boy, and I remember the girl that I was in love with was inside of a building that was collapsing. And I remember, it's like they put you inside of a scenario Like, and I think they're interested in the concept of rescue and how maybe humans will put their lives on the line to help rescue another human. And I feel like they were observing me in that dream state, like to see what I would do. Like, is he going to run in and try to save this little girl, his girlfriend, or is he just going to sit there and cry? And I just sat there and cried. I'm like, I'm only 4. What am I supposed to do? I'm looking at the building, it's collapsing. And I just cried, and I'm waking up. But I think, so I think, you know, the reason I mention that is because I think that, I mean, there's a lot of, like I said, that we could be, that we must be being visited by more than one species. And I think some of them do have an interest in human souls and emotions and empathy. And I mean, some of them are more interested in biological. Might see us as just containers and vessels. And I mean, I'll tell you this. I'm going back to demons. The way I look at it, Cody, is like I used to think all the stories of all these Indians and the Mayans, Kukulkan, a flying feathered serpent. When I was a kid, I was like, man, they're just making all this up. I mean, they're from the jungle, so of course it's like this colorful flying serpent. You know, it's like everything seemed like, oh, all these other cultures. I guess I just discounted everything. I guess I just believe in Christ and God. And I just thought everything else was just BS. You know, basically, I don't know why I felt that way. But now, as you know, as I grew older, look, when you look at the Sumerian civilization, they didn't give themselves credit for coming out with the first system of schools and courts. And modern society, they gave that credit to the Anunnaki, sky beings. I mean, why is this? Normally, civilizations, if you create great things, you kind of honor this. Look what we did, and you kind of show it off to your neighbors. Look at our great civilization and what we have created. You know, it's just like a manly thing to, like, this is what I did. You know, not like, oh, some flying creature from space came down and they taught us how. It doesn't even make sense to lie like that. But I did some research. I'm like, did they do any human sacrifice? And they did do some human sacrifice. And then you move forward to any civilization that you pick out that has this advanced knowledge, all were doing human sacrifice. So I was looking at the Mayans or the Olmecs and the pyramids there. And I would ask myself, how did they know these long calendars? How are their calendars so precise? How did they have all this astronomical knowledge and all these things and the ability to make these structures and the knowledge of everything they were doing? And again, they were saying they were in contact with a feathered serpent. And what are they doing at these magnificent structures? They're cutting the hearts out of men and cutting their heads off and rolling them down the steps. So what kind of entity wants that? I would have to say, yeah, that would be a negative entity if it wants to see you defile yourself as a species for it. If you're cutting the heads off of your neighbors and rolling them down the steps, and that's not a pure, like, good thing. So
yeah,
to me, that just shows that maybe these entities weren't necessarily positive entities. And then you move forward to the Egyptians. Again, they seem to have even in the Bible, it talks about they turned their staff into a snake. Now, if you're Christian and you believe that, then you must believe that they were in touch with some type of entities that gave them the power to do things like that. Right?
yeah.
And so who were their gods? So these Egyptian gods were giving them the power to do that. But and the knowledge. It's like it gives them the knowledge to do these things. And in return, what do the Egyptians do? They persecute God's people. They, turn them into slaves and try to chase them down and kill them all. It's like these entities where the people that are giving the knowledge, what do we give in return? We give them sacrifice of ourselves. Humanization of ourselves, rolling the heads down. How more, dehumanizing can you be? So you look at the Egyptians and, what they were doing to the Jews. Then you move forward again to the Nazis. They have the Vril Society. They're doing black art stuff, right? They're getting in contact with entities, and suddenly they come out with the first rockets, the first jets. The rockets, the same ones that Wernher von Braun used to get us to the moon, and they have all these advanced technologies. Too little, too late. but they still got them. And what were they doing? They were killing every Jew they could see. I mean, maybe, is that part of the payment that they were giving to whatever entities might have been giving them these, technologies, is my question. And so after looking at all of that, I was thinking to myself, are we like the new Babylon, sort of like, we have technologies now? And then I would think to myself, man, I wonder if we're just like every other civilization that's getting technology in the past. Are we in some Department of Defense building doing human sacrifice to these entities? And then oddly enough, with there being like 350 to 400,000 children missing in the United States each year, right? And what you see in the Epstein files with what is it, frizzle drop, or and adrenochrome drinking and terrorizing kids, and worship the Baal and pedophilism, and all of these things of the jerking, eating, consumption. What does that tell you? That sounds kind of like Satanism to me, and it sounds like, right?
Yeah, that's
So
man.
I don't doubt, and so the story, Cody, is this. If you want to run down that rabbit hole a little bit further, you got Ronell, not Hubbard, was it? It's Aleister Crowley, and was it Jack Parsons? Aleister Crowley is like a Satanism straight up. He's trying to do he's trying to invoke demons. And he wants to do it using child pedophilia and sex magic and sacrifice, and preferably, he said, of a willing victim, someone that was raised, psychologically to be prepared for that moment and that wanted to accept their fate. And apparently they were trying to open up, like you were talking about earlier, a portal like Stern is kind of trying to do, basically to let some type of entity into our reality. Supposedly they were at some point were finally successful. And again, what happens to Jack Parsons? If you look into this, Cody, I don't know if you know these people very well. Jack Parsons was not a trained individual. He knew nothing at the time of rocket engineering. After this, though, you have JPL laboratories built for him. Jack Parsons Laboratory, Jet Propulsion Laboratory, built for somebody with no classical training in the field whatsoever. But again, what did he do? He contacted entities, and did human sacrifice in exchange for knowledge. It's like, and so, yeah, when you look at these things, it does seem to have a very negative entity base. But I will say this also, the flip side of that, I feel as if the yin and yang, the good and bad sort of nature might permeate the universe. It may not only be here. So, like, you may have very well the Dracos, which could be like your Kukulkans coming down and demanding a sacrifice and, giving you knowledge. But then you also might have the Palladians, who, there's a lot of stories of the blonde-haired blue people that supposedly actually came down and talked to Eisenhower. And they're like, look, Mr. Eisenhower, you don't need all these weapons. You need to focus on yourselves, learn peace. If you can raise your vibration higher, you no longer will need or want the weapons. And all the technologies that you're searching for will come to you naturally. And he was like, well, that sounds nice. But what if the Russians and Chinese take the other deal, which is when the Greys and whoever they represent land and said, hey, we'll give you the technology today. I'm not sure what they want. Oh, I do know what they wanted. The story is, and even his granddaughter talks about it, for people like me to be able to be abducted. Look, that was the deal. Look, we're going to give you technologies, and in return, people like Bobby over here and others, we're going to give you a list of who they are, and we're going to make sure that they make it home. And, we're going to let you know, and it's being a limited amount of people, from which they totally did not apparently bind to that agreement. And there's a lot of us out there. And I think the fear was that if they didn't take that deal and another country did, and we were waiting around for our auras to get to this higher, mentality, in the meantime, they're going to be over there with the technology today ready to pull us up. And so it kind of put it like, okay, well, we're working with these entities.
Man. I appreciate and I appreciate the you just sharing that with us. I mean, you seem to have a lot of knowledge just in this category, and I
Yeah,
think we'll definitely talk about this further. Maybe even have you sometime call in or jump on one of our live shows when we're doing some stuff with different types of conspiracies that we cover sometimes. But um, man, your stories are uh, really they're I don't really know what to say. They're captivating. So, just hearing you tell it, and the descriptions of the eyes, and it's just I really appreciate you taking the time to do this and to share. And I think it's important for people to do this, so others may have the bravery or the comfort to step out and do the same.
yeah. Well, like, I really think there's a lot of people out there like me. I mean, well, look, if this is happening, which it is, I mean, it doesn't matter. Like, I mean, I'm saying it does matter. Uh, what does it all mean? I think, look, I'm just gonna, I don't know if are we running short of time now?
Yeah, we got a little bit of time left, so if you want to, yeah, dive
Okay.
into it.
What to me, what does it all mean? I think that in the 40s, we did make a deal. I think that we get technologies from them. I think we're probably communicating right now on devices that probably in microcomputer chips. Like I don't think this is probably even human technology we're using right now. The microcomputer chips and stuff did not come until after Roswell, along with Kevlar, fiber optics, and a host of lasers and other devices. Which is really like little trinkets to them. It's like nothing, for what they got in return, which is us. So you have a government like using technologies, and if these technologies have even the slightest military application, they'll never see the light of day because they don't want our adversaries to get a hold of it and then potentially use it against us. So there's all kinds of technologies that could really, like 0 point energy, all kinds of things that could make our lives easy, way easier than they are, that are never going to see the light of day here on the surface. um, However, I believe there's a breakaway society. I believe that these underground networks, the bases and stuff, have turned into, the Department of Defense has lost over or misplaced over $20 trillion, along with the, HUD misplacing funds. There's reports from, insiders that they've have cities underground that are massive, like the size of Manhattan. They're spending all these trillions of dollars because the surface is, it could be impacted by asteroids. It could be a solar flare. It could be a nuclear war. Anything on the surface is always vulnerable. And so you have, a breakaway society under there using, these next generation technologies and kind of leaving the common person in the dark and behind. Like, I mean, I think that's probably why we're not building up our Navy and we're letting China outpace us because, the Tic Tacs, which might have been ours, could just fly up on them in an instant. Like everything's changed now. But we're at a precipice right now, Cody, where my stories and stuff. You know, I think a lot of this is going to come out more in the open, more and more and more. I mean, I would just say, hopefully, my stories can just put it into people's minds to kind of prepare yourself mentally of the future that you might be looking at. We'll just have to see how it goes, I guess.
So, what do you guys think about that episode? It's fascinating. I mean, there's a lot to that. I've heard other reports from other people with similar styled stories, especially kind of the orb shapes with the different colors of the black holes in the middle of them. There's a lot of different things that this interview had that we haven't really heard on this channel before, with the strange symbols and stuff like that, and I think it's fascinating. So I hope you guys really enjoyed it, and make sure you like and comment, share this, subscribe, help us get to 1,000 subscribers. We're pushing hard to get there. We're getting close, and it's all because of you guys, and we appreciate that. So share this, and we need more folks to share stories. So if you have a story you'd like to share, reach out. My email is strangeconspiracies88@gmail.com. We'd love to talk to you, share your story, and I look forward to seeing you guys Wednesday night for our next live show, 8:30 p.m. Central Standard Time. We'll see you then. As always, guys, stay weird, stay rude, and stay alive. We'll see you next time.